Aliens, Genocide. Chapter 14. Everyone knew that service chow sucked. You didn't join the Colonial Marines for gourmet food. That was for certain. Still, as Kozlowski accepted the food dumped unceremoniously on her plate at the cafeteria line, her stomach cringed at the lumps of colorless, reconstituted what's-its her meal comprised. She well knew that all the food groups were represented, that this was vitamin and nutrient-rich stuff. There just wasn't much taste or appeal to it. That was all. Still, the gig was just 2 days away. Gotta carb up. She stepped up over to push a button that would put a dollop of what the machine claimed was mashed potatoes on her plate. She positioned the plate under the nozzle. Still not quite there. She'd been a bit preoccupied ever since she'd seen that clone torso down on Grant's deck. The merging of alien and human to her had always been the height of obscenity. Eradicating that threat had been what her life had been about now for over 20 years. Her use of fire, she'd rationalized as an exercise of dominance over the aliens. Now, though, she wasn't so sure. Unfortunately, she suspected she was hooked on the stuff. She'd been okay this morning, no bad champagne headache, just a chemical pall of gloom riding her. A quarter pill wouldn't banish it. A half pill didn't give her the buzz she realized she wanted to get through the day. She'd taken what amounted to an entire pill, something that she'd only done before in battle exercises and war itself. And the stuff had unwound in her, like the talons of a bug zapping her neurons. She shuddered, trying to forget about it. When this mission was over, she was going to throw her pills in the garbage, clean up her act, live clean and healthy. But she knew that she needed the Xenozip to deal with what was coming up in her life, and it pissed her off, especially with her conflicted feelings about Daniel Grant, especially after what she'd seen down there. She tried to tune out the chatter in her head, to focus on getting some of this food down, despite her lack of appetite. She took her tray and sat down, alone at the side of an unoccupied table. In another corner of the room, Jastro was noodling on his saxophone. The man didn't play well, but he didn't play badly either. At least, if it wasn't exactly melodious, it wasn't that grating either. However, his buddy, who was sitting beside him as usual, didn't seem to appreciate it. "Could you just give it a rest, Jastro?" "What's wrong, Ellis? I thought you liked music." "I like music fine, but not blaring in my ear while I'm eating." Kozlowski listened to them bicker, better than concentrating on this crap that she was stuffing into her face. Jastro stopped playing and they talked. They talked about Hendrickson, who had just come in, walked through the cafeteria, taken his food, and was walking out again. "Hey, check it out," said Jastro. "Hendrickson's doing it again. He's taking his food to the room. Oh, man. The bet's still on here. I say he's a synthetic." "Give me a break," said Ellis. "They make models that eat, you know." "It's not just that. He won't shower with us. I've never seen him shave. And from the way he talks in briefings, I'd guess he'd never seen combat." "Yeah, that's odd. I say he's a company plant, and I don't like it. Bad things happen to Marine ships with synthetics on board." The next thing Kozlowski knew, Hendrickson was by the table. "Jastro, why don't you just say what you've got on your mind to my face?" He lifted the private off the chair. The sax banged onto the floor. Kozlowski shot up to put a stop to this. Shit, man, let me go. Sure. The big corporal threw the private across the room. Hendrickson! Screamed Kozlowski. Hendrickson froze. He turned around and looked at his commander, his face impassive. Sorry. Ellis was leaning over, attending to his buddy, who seemed okay, just dazed. We're all under pressure here, Hendrickson, snarled Kozlowski. Take it out on the bugs. She swiveled on the privates. And that means you two. We're all working together on this. No divisiveness. You know, Corporal, a voice said behind her. I admire a man who doesn't take any crap. I honestly do. Grant's voice. He came up to them, and his easygoing arrogance seemed to cut through the tension. But the truth is, I need every last one of these troops for this operation. He looked over to the fallen Jastro, who was just getting up. You don't have to kiss and make up, but please, don't mash his skull, okay? Thanks. Hendrickson nodded. Kozlowski dismissed him. He took his food and went off again towards his quarters. Kozlowski turned to the others. All right, back to the chow. I don't want any energy-deficient troops when we get down to work. As an example, she went back to her own plate, which had gone cold. Nonetheless, she began to stuff it in her face. Grant came over to her. Colonel, he said in a low voice, can we talk a moment, please? Alone. Pull up some victuals, Dan. If I've got to work my way through this stuff, so do you. He didn't even try to argue. He went off, got a minimum order of ghoulish, reconstituted stew, and spooned it down, trying to look cheerful as they made chit-chat. The sucker looked much better now. Probably had himself a cocktail and a nap and a good hot bath. He even smelled good. Oddly, Kozlowski enjoyed the small talk. She was still annoyed at her attraction to the asshole, but she didn't have to let him know about it, and she could enjoy the warped sex appeal he presented on her own terms. He probably sprayed on pheromones, the conscienceless bastard. Finally, when she was satisfied the last morsel was gone from his plate, she agreed to go with him somewhere they couldn't be overheard, but a meeting room, not his room. Look, he said, I didn't know you'd react the way you did down there. Corporal Hendrickson took it well. He's even volunteering to double-check security. I just want to make sure I'm still getting the best out of you on this mission, Colonel. There was never any doubt of that, chum. You asked for the best, you got the best. But I want to tell you, I'm not real crazy about your methods. Well, I'm doing this for the benefit of mankind. She laughed in his face. You don't have to try to pull that one on me. You're doing this for money. Ultimately, it will save lives. What are you talking about? You're risking good marine lives for this damn jelly. And for what? For profit, pure and simple. You're a ruthless bastard. At least my superiors honestly believe they're doing what's right. I'm risking my own life here too, remember? Only because you're too scared to face up to a souped-up loan shark back home. He cringed. Ah, I told you that, huh? You bet. I pretty much guessed something along those lines anyway. Nonetheless, we figure a source for this, a safe controlled source, we can finance a full erasure of the aliens on planet Earth. Studying them, we'll be able to know how to deal with them when we encounter them on other worlds. All sounds good. Doesn't change anything about what I think about you, though. You'll honor my concerns about the others, though, not letting them know. You think I want to undermine their morale by letting them know that a Xeno's going to be prowling in some cage below them while they're helpless in hypersleep? They're my people, and I'll take care of them. You watch out for your own crew. Understand? I'm glad we're clear on this, Colonel. I really don't quite understand your hostility, though. I think it's best for both our sakes if we got along much better. Don't push it, Grant. And most of all, don't push me. She got up and she got away from him. If she hung around the handsome goon much longer, she didn't know what she'd do, kiss him or kill him. She wasn't sure which she'd enjoy more. In the dim lights of the cargo bay 9, shadows moved, padding past open doors, feet paced over 2 controls, fingers pushed, pulled, tapped. Status quo alarms were turned off. Serums were released and rheostats adjusted. Inside the ghost-lit tank, the hanging torso jerked. Satisfied that the necessary measures had been taken, the figure hurried back out of the room, door shushing closed behind it. In the tank, the hanging torso jerked again. In the hanging torso, the alien embryo, already formed and at full term, but previously kept dormant by electronic and biochemical means, shivered into full life over a matter of mere minutes. It shook. It gasped, sparked by the energies that had been shot through it and the instincts that had been ignited. It flailed in its seething. Membranes tore. Muscles were yanked from their mooring. Still, it was not yet free. Instinct activated. With a preternatural power, it pushed up against the diaphragm, up through the tangle of lungs and heart and arteries, up against the rib cage. Then, with its hard equipment prepared for just this moment, and every bit of its energy, it plunged through the bones, through the skin, into the freedom of gaseous atmosphere. The torso exploded. Blood spattered. Bronchial tissues splattered up like the eruption of a volcano. Bits of broken bone sponged against metal and glass. Like a worm with a head of all teeth, the alien chestburster reared up above the carcass of its birth. Weaving in a sensory dance, sensing no danger, it began to scuttle for the darkness of a corner. The hands that had nudged the obscene delivery forward had not removed the precautions against just such an event. Delicate motion detectors reacted to the scuttling. Heat-seeking alien. Spectrographic readings determined its nature, double-checked, and then implemented the next step. Should the thing be born in unsupervised circumstances, there was no other alternatives. Servomotors hummed as coaxial cables controlled 3 separate particle beam weapons, aiming toward the source and form causing the spectrographic abnormalities. Had it not had to pause for a moment to attempt to get through the glass of the tank, the alien might have survived longer, rendering the mission an entirely different affair. However, it did pause, and the weapons did fire. The beams converged into a fulcrum of energy. The alien blew apart, adding its gore to that of the torso it had already scattered. The force lifted its little head up and off and through the hole it had smacked in the glass, followed by charred bits of its tail. The teeth gnashed, the tail twitched. Then both stilled, surrendering their last signs of survival to the alarm that blared to life. Chapter 15. When she reached the cargo bay of Deck D, and she successfully convinced the flustered scientist by the door that she had Daniel Grant's permission for access, a little determined pushing helped greatly. She found the cause of the alarm waiting for her, bathed in emergency light. Hovered over the dead infant alien wearing their acid suits were the science team. Daniel Grant paced beyond the reach of any acid, punching the air and cursing. God damn it. God damn it. What the hell went wrong? I'm looking at $1 million loss here. Minimum. He did not notice Kozlowski come up behind him until she put a calming, restraining hand on his arm. He jumped away from her, looking startled, then sighed and folded his arms. I don't understand. I just don't understand. Dr. Friel knelt the closest to the wreckage. Tears were streaming from his eyes. He looked as though he would have liked to have gathered the bits and pieces of the alien baby and cradled them in his arms. Acid neutralizing liquid had automatically been splashed, but there were still pocks and holes in the floor. Dr. Begali stepped up beside Grant and Kozlowski. Looks like someone diddled with the equipment. Took off the safeguards. The baby bug popped early, yes. The good news is no alien running amok in the sewage pipes. Bad news. Damage. No alien baby on hand to queenify. And a little heartbreak, it would seem. Yes. Christ, said Grant. His face was white. A saboteur. Who would do such a thing? Cried Dr. Friel. So young. So very young. And she didn't even get to see me. I trust you checked your doctor's psychological profiles, said Kozlowski. Friel looks a bit on the edge here. He'll be fine. He'll be fine, muttered Grant, just a little too wrapped up in his work. No wife, no kids, said Begali. Looks like Friel wanted to be a daddy bad. The stricken scientist spun on the assemblage. He swung an arc with an accusing finger. Which one of you monsters was it? Tears runneled down his cheeks. Which one of you killed my baby? The finger stopped on Kozlowski. Was it you, Colonel? You despised it the moment you saw what it was. I could tell. No, it wasn't me, you fool, she spat back. Would someone get a shot of something for this hysteric? Something strong? And maybe a straitjacket? She motioned to the wreckage. And douse this stuff in some acid neutralizer fast, in case the blood wants to eat through the deck anymore. I trust you'll help me establish better security here for the return trip, said Grant. Of course, she said. She spun around and started away. Grant caught up with her. Colonel, Alex, could I ask for a moment of your time? Alone? She was going to spit back a curt no, but his eyes implored her. They looked frightened and haunted, the part of Daniel Grant that she'd seen when he was drunk was there, and she was startled by its humanity. Meeting room, 5 minutes. I'll brew the tea, she said. Thank you, Colonel. The meeting room was secure. Peripheral sound dampers down, communications off. The two sat across from one another, sipping a soothing herb tea. So, said Kozlowski, breaking the grim silence, who do you think it is? An emissary of the organized crime boys you owe money to? Or one of your drug company rivals like MedTech? I don't get it, said Grant, shaking his head. I can't believe I overlooked the possibility. Everyone knows that if this mission fails, I'm history. If you ask me, it's better this way, said Kozlowski. Something tells me you would have gotten more than you bargained for with Dr. Friel in control of a queen alien. Grant sighed. You're probably right. But that isn't the point. This sabotage will continue, and a lot more than money could be lost next time. Kozlowski shrugged. It's hard for me to be frightened of a corporate spy or even of the mob when I've been fighting drooling monsters for years. Yes, but how often have you run into infiltration? Don't you see? You and your soldiers have always been united against an obvious threat. Take it from someone who knows. Nothing is deadlier than the enemy within. You have any suggestions? That's why I asked you here. Have you any clue as to who the saboteur could be? You didn't set up your system to safeguard against one or to detect the activity of one. I suggest you do so now. I haven't the vaguest. I can only tell you it isn't me. No. You'd think I'd be talking to you if you thought it was you? No, Colonel. We'll take precautions. But we'll have to take precautions and remain vigilant. If you note unusual activity in any of your people, please report it to me. I could say the same about your people. Oh, you can be sure I'm going to check them all out. He sipped his tea. Nonetheless, this is going to be one hell of a mission. It's already that, Grant. But then, I've been to hell before, so I'll put in a good word with Beelzebub. Thanks, Colonel. Strikes me that you're getting awfully self-involved here. We're all in this mission together, and we're committed to its success. Remember that. The mission comes first, everything else later, including your narcissistic moans. That's all well and good, Colonel. Just pop a couple of pills and all your troubles go away. Bastard. She got up to go, then had a second thought. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a medicine bottle. Just a warning, Grant. She tossed it to him. That's my supply of the shit that you make. I'm swearing off. So I'm going to be in a pretty bitchy mood. Grant looked down at the bottle. Okay, Colonel. He stuck it in his pocket. Maybe I'll take it along myself. A dose of my own medicine might be in order. I wouldn't suggest it, she said, turning away so she wouldn't grab it back. She regretted the gesture already. But she'd see the bastard in true hell before she took his poison anymore. She did, however, take the tea. The USS Razia locked into orbit around the planet, dubbed Hive World. Hive World, of course, was not its official name. That would be G-435 for obscure classification purposes. It was the fourth of 10 planets orbiting Achilles II, a ghost star. It was a Class M planet. with a great deal of seismic activity that rendered it generally flat and comparatively barren. Huge banks of clouds obscured the surface, but analysis sensors had already scouted out the geographic area that was known to be the location of the alien hive visited previously. 0 hour approached. The mothership, naturally, would not descend. A Class 9 lander would perform that duty, bearing with it the complement of Marines who embarked upon the mission. The Marines all knew their jobs, but there was a palpable pall of tension and dread in the lander's interior as the soldiers, already garbed in their special acid-neutralizing suits, began to file in and strap into their grav chairs. They all carried their carbines and an array of other special weapons in which they specialized. Private Jastrow carried something a little extra: his saxophone. "So what are you going to do, Jastrow?" said Mahoney, attempting a smile. "Scare the crickets off with Freeform? A little late Coltrane?" "Shut up, Mahoney," said Jastrow. "You never know when I'm going to need to unwind." "Yow, just having a little joke. Give me a break." "Cool it, Edie," said Ellis. "We're all a little on edge, huh? These suits don't douse acid words." Edie Mahoney nodded. "Sorry, guys. I'll get off your case. How about some knock-knock jokes?" Ellis grinned. "As long as they're dirty." Nervous titters. Dr. Amos Begali walked in and slouched onto a chair, looking a little preoccupied. Ellis nudged his friend. "Hey, Jazz, I didn't know that old big nozzle was taking the plunge." Jastrow shrugged. "I don't know. Something big went on down in Mysteryville Deck. Nobody got killed or hurt. I've been keeping track, and I've seen them all. But from what I saw on the down list, that Dr. Frail guy was supposed to take the plunge. Looked a bit lorn yesterday, freaked out. Couldn't deal with it. Probably smart. That's okay. That Begali guy seems to know his stuff. Yeah, but I get the creeps from him. You get the creeps when I play Sun Ra tunes." Jastrow lifted his horn up to blow a few notes, but Ellis stopped him. "Look, these guys are all hyped up to kill things, Jazz. Don't make them practice on you." Okay. So where's Grant and the Colonel?" He looked at his chronometer, featuring dials and sensors capable of all manner of odd things. "Humping, you think?" "Come on. I think dear Kaz dug her gonads out of herself with a rusty spoon." "I don't know, man. I feel some heavy vibes between them." "Yeah, hostility. Just be glad she's directing it at someone else and not us." Jastrow shook his head. "You know, I've trained for this. I've killed bugs. I know everything by heart. They say I'm about as ready as a Marine can be mentally and physically. Spiritually, though," he shook his head, "I ain't ready." "Who is, buddy?" Ellis said. He shuddered. "Who is?" He looked around and saw his shudder echoed in the eyes of his fellow troops. Colonel Alex Kozlowski entered the ship. She already stowed her personal weapons and supplies in the appropriate cubicle earlier that day, just before she ran through the checklist of the Mark 9 planetary surface lander dubbed USS Anteater by some wag. Now she carried a large steaming cup of coffee and a grim smile. "Ready to waste some bugs, folks?" A roar of approval greeted her words. "Good. But remember, that's incidental to our mission. Our priorities are inside that nest. Our appointment with the Queen Mother. She sipped at the strong black coffee. The caffeine helped her cope with the downer she was experiencing from withdrawal from fire. She'd put some regulation pills into her suit, things her system was used to. She didn't want to jeopardize the troops or the mission by lack of performance. She did not, however, want to fall back on fire. Although the decision put her on edge, the boost in spirit and self-determination more than made up for it. "Anybody see Daniel Grant around?" she asked. "Last I saw him, he was talking to Hastings about something," said Corporal Hendrickson. "He'd better get his tail down here or it's going to get left on the razzia. And no big loss." She ambled over to Fitzwilliam and Tenerez, the lieutenants who'd been pegged as pilots for this boat. They were huddled over their banks of controls doing final diagnostics of their system arrays. "How's it doing, guys?" Fitzwilliam grinned at her. "I'm telling you, Colonel, we've got one mean machine here. Backup systems galore. Lovely and elegant." "Yeah," said Tenerez, not looking up from the screen he was reading. "War with the Xenos has given us a boost in technology. We've got some pretty stuff in here. Gives me a huge boost of confidence, I'll tell you that." "Too bad this thing can't just do the dirty work," said Fitzwilliam. "What, robot controlled? And miss all the fun?" Laughter from the troops. A good sign. Ever since she'd shown them the acid-neutralizing suits, they seemed to perk up quite a bit. Without the big threat of the alien blood eating through you, this was a much less dangerous mission, and the troops seemed to realize that. As though he'd taken it as a cue, and the last passenger hurried on, lugging a sack closed by a zipper, he quickly stowed it where the other stuff had been placed. "All right, people," Daniel Grant said. "You can close the access port." The door closed behind him after a touch of a pilot's finger. "Thank you. I just want to say quickly that this is the most exciting day of my life," he said in a voice that had been clearly exercised much at after banquet speeches. "Down there," he said, pointing out a port toward the pearl and cerulean clouds swirling above a continental mass. "Down on this strange world are the secrets that will strengthen our country, perhaps even point us all toward a better future. Down there are the brethren of the creatures that not only are a threat to humanity, but who devastated our beloved homeworld." He paused for dramatic impact. "It's in our hands now, in our power. Let's do our mission and do it well." A roar of approval arose from the ranks. Grant, smiling like a politician, took his graft chair and belted himself in. Kozlowski gave him the thumbs-up signal. "Well, Grant, you goat," she thought, "get ready for the panty raid of your life."